Chuluota, Florida. It's the kind of place where people go to escape the noise. Nestled just far enough from the chaotic hum of Orlando, it is a community defined by its quiet streets, sprawling oaks, and a sense of absolute security. It is a place where neighbors know each other and where violence is something you only ever see on the evening news. But on the morning of January 25, 2019, that illusion of suburban safety was shattered.
She's sitting in the dining area. Female Hawaiian or simple 140 to 5'5", medium build, wearing jeans.
It started with a simple absence. Grant Amato, an ambitious and highly reliable 31-year-old, failed to show up for his shift at the local hospital. For Cody, being late was unusual. Completely vanishing without a call was unthinkable. Growing concerned, his colleagues contacted the Seminole County Sheriff's Office to request a standard welfare check at his family home on Sultan Circle. When deputies arrived at the pristine two-story house, nothing appeared out of the ordinary. The lawn was cut. The windows were intact. There were no signs of forced entry, no shattered glass, no distress signals. But the house was entirely unresponsive.
We're going to be clearing the residence. Give us traffic, please. Sheriff's Office!
As officers made their way inside, the heavy silence of the home gave way to a devastating reality. In different areas of the house, deputies found 3 individuals: Grant Amato, the 59-year-old patriarch of the family, Margaret Amato, his 61-year-old wife, and their youngest son, Cody. All 3 had lost their lives to fatal wounds. The crime scene was perplexing. This wasn't a robbery gone wrong. Valuables were left untouched. It was targeted. It was intimate. But as investigators secured the perimeter and began mapping the grim reality of the Amato household, they realized someone was missing. The middle son, 29-year-old Grant Amato, was nowhere to be found, and his white Honda Accord was gone from the driveway. To understand what happened in the early hours of January 25th, we have to look away from the physical crime scene and look into a completely different world. A digital reality where a $200,000 delusion was slowly tearing a perfect family apart. To the outside observer, the Amato family represented the American dream. Grant Amato was a disciplined, hardworking father who had built a solid career in the pharmaceutical industry. Margaret was the emotional core of the family, a devoted mother who managed the household. Their sons were pushed toward success, particularly in the medical field. Cody was thriving in his career, and for a long time, Grant was too. Grant was intelligent. He had enrolled in a highly demanding nurse anesthetist program. He was, by all accounts, bright and capable of building a lucrative, respectable life. But the pressure of expectations can sometimes create fractures in the human psyche. And for Grant, a failure at school became the catalyst for a total retreat from reality. After being dismissed from his medical program for administering improperly documented medication to patients, Grant returned to his childhood bedroom in Chuluota. Stripped of his identity as the successful future doctor, he found himself isolated, depressed, and desperately seeking validation. He found that validation on the internet, specifically on a live streaming website where he crossed paths with a Bulgarian webcam model. In the realm of criminal psychology, we often study how isolation breeds obsession. For Grant, this wasn't just a casual online interaction. It became an all-consuming parasocial relationship. Through the safety of his screen, Grant wasn't a failed nursing student living with his parents. He constructed a massive, elaborate lie. He presented himself as a highly successful, wealthy professional. He became the hero of his own digital narrative. But maintaining a fiction of wealth requires real capital. The financial drain started small. A few tokens here, a private chat there. But as the psychological addiction deepened, the transactions skyrocketed. Grant didn't just empty his own bank accounts. He systematically bypassed his family's digital security. He gained access to his father's accounts, his mother's savings, and even his brother Cody's hard-earned money. Over a deeply destructive period, Grant funneled an estimated $200,000 to this model. $250,000 evaporated into the internet just to keep a woman thousands of miles away calling his name through a monitor. When Grant Amato finally uncovered the missing funds, the confrontation shook the foundation of the family. Discovering that your child has stolen $200,000 from you would break most families. Many would press charges. But Chad and Margaret Amato tried to save their son. Recognizing that Grant was suffering from a severe psychological addiction, they offered him a chance at redemption. In late 2018, Grant was sent to a specialized rehabilitation center in Fort Lauderdale, focusing on internet and behavioral addictions. He spent weeks there, away from his phone, away from his computer, and away from the digital fantasy he had constructed. When he completed the program, Chad laid down a strict, non-negotiable set of rules for his return to the Sultan Circle home. Grant had to find employment. He had to begin paying back the stolen money. And most importantly, under no circumstances was he ever to contact the webcam model again. If he broke these terms, he would be permanently evicted from the house. No safety net, no second chances. For a brief window, it seemed the family was healing, but an addiction rooted in delusion is incredibly powerful. The real world where Grant was in massive debt, unemployed, and heavily monitored by his father was painful. The digital world was intoxicating. On the evening of Thursday, January 24th, the fragile peace shattered. Chad checked the internet router logs. The digital footprint was undeniable. Grant had breached the ultimate condition. He was communicating with the model again. The resulting argument was, according to investigators, explosive. Grant Amato told his son that he had crossed the line for the final time. He ordered Grant to pack his bags and leave the house by midnight. Cody, the younger brother, attempted to mediate, trying to calm the boiling tensions between his father and brother. But the damage was done. Grant was facing total exile. In his mind, he was being forced to choose between the family who demanded accountability and the digital fantasy that demanded money. What happened in the dark hours that followed would be left for digital forensics to piece together. While investigators combed through the grim scene at Sultan Circle, a massive manhunt was underway for Grant the following day. He was located over 30 miles away, sitting quietly in a hotel room in Orlando.
You can leave your stuff. You'll be able to come back. I gotta get hold on. Okay. Stairs are right down there. Anyone else in here? That in Charlie 23 Alpha. 346, room 346 has been evacuated. Your weapon safe? Look over. Nobody's in the room?
No.
Secondary suite? Okay, I don't see any bodies. Sierra 23, Charlie 20,000. Turn off the radios for me. Who's, oh. All right, stand by. We'll get to it.
Yeah, that's that. Where is it? Right here in the corner.
You're being cooperative, sir. We appreciate that. Some Seminole County detectives want to talk to you, so we're going to get the handcuffs off of you.
Nothing in your pants, correct?
It's just a normal routine when we encounter someone that we want to make sure you're safe. Now we know you don't have any weapons, we'll get those restraints off of you. We're confident you've been cooperative, everything's good, so we appreciate that very much. Goes along.
When detectives brought him into the interrogation room, they braced themselves for a highly emotional interview. His entire family had just been wiped out. Yet, as you watch the footage, Grant's demeanor is entirely detached. He sits with his arms crossed, his voice is flat. He sheds no tears.
You know, the only thing that I have is just the times in which I left the house. You know, there was an argument when Cody had gotten home, and then there was nothing that he could do to help me. So I don't remember the exact time when I actually left, but I had left later than what I had said.
So you were home when Cody got home?
Yes.
Tell us about that. What time did he get home, and why did he come home?
I mean, he got home at, I think, like 10:30. I still think that's when he got home, was like at around 10:30. I don't know why he was able to leave early.
And what was going on at the house when he arrived?
My dad and my mom were arguing, and then I was still just packing up all my stuff, or gathering the things that I could gather. And then when Cody got home, he started to transgress with my dad, and I was still kind of just staying out of it and doing my own thing. And then the end result was still the end result, and then I had to still leave.
And then, so is it true that you still met Cody up the block, or was that?
No.
So you didn't meet him up the
No.
block? So why did you tell us that?
I don't know.
All right, so then, now let's start from the time you and your father started having the argument, about 6:30 you said when he got home?
Yeah.
Tell us exactly what happened from that time on. Even what was said.
I mean, it was just a lot of yelling. I mean, it was everything that he had been telling me for the past months and months and months about just how I had ruined his retirement and how I had pushed him back, and now, you know, he'd never be able to do the things that he wanted to do.
Grant offered a simple alibi. He admitted to the massive fight with his father. He admitted to packing his bags. He claimed he left the house late Thursday night, drove around aimlessly, and eventually checked into the hotel in Orlando. He insisted that when he walked out the front door, his mother, father, and brother were alive and well. But modern true crime investigations are rarely solved by confessions alone. They are solved by routers, cell towers, and binary code.
Because I had saddled him with a lot more expenses. and that I had told him that, you know, once I can get a job, then I have plans to make amends for the things that I had caused for everybody.
Mm-hmm. And he's yelling.
Yeah.
He's heated. Are you yelling back at him?
No, I had never yelled at my dad.
And are you sitting on the couch downstairs, like you said?
I was in the living room, yeah.
And at what point does he put his hands on you?
It's just, I mean, it's like maybe 5 minutes into the conversation. So, I mean, there wasn't really anything that was a trigger that I can think of.
What was your reaction when he grabbed your shirt and pulled you up?
I mean, I had always been passive, so I mean, I didn't fight back or anything like that.
Grant is employing a textbook manipulation tactic right here. By portraying himself as a physically weak and passive victim, he is trying to convince the detectives that he is completely incapable of a ruthless triple execution.
Like that, I just tried to get my grounding, and then we were just standing, and you know, just continued on.
And then what?
And then after that, I started the whole process of gathering everything.
And where's your mom at this point?
She was still in her office.
Did she intervene at all?
She had gotten up to say that, you know, like, you need to settle down, or you know, some sort of diffusing statement that she always used to make. And then my dad yelled at her to stay out of this, and then she just went back into there.
Okay, and then what? What happened next?
I mean, then it was just like it was just a lot of yelling and confrontation between me and Dad, but there wasn't anything more physical about it. And like I said, I was just going up and about, you know, getting my stuff and taking it out to my car and getting back whatever I could gather.
And what did your dad do while you were doing that?
He was just following me around.
Just making sure you were gathering your stuff to get out?
My possessions, and not taking anything of his.
And how long did that go on before Cody shows up?
I mean, that was like for 4 hours or something like that.
So you did that for 3 hours?
Yeah.
Gathering your stuff?
And dealing with Dad, and because it wasn't just like he wouldn't
pack up those 2 little bags you brought. Was 3 hours?
Yeah, he wouldn't just. I mean, I went onto my computer to back up some stuff onto like some flash drives and I mean all that other stuff, but it wasn't just like with him where I could just go and do my thing. You know, I mean, he would stop me, and then we would talk for like an extended period of time, and then I would start to do my thing again, and then it would stop again, and I mean, that's all it was.
Was your father wearing this?
Yeah.
And what about that gun on his waist?
No.
He didn't have that on?
No.
Is this normal?
No. I mean, I hadn't seen him have his gun since like high school.
So he doesn't walk around like this normally?
No.
Why do you think he would be like this?
I don't know if it's because of what he had told me, that if I came back that he would kill me.
I mean, like you said, you're afraid of him.
Yeah.
But we're here to this. This is the person that is coming to solve the problems for you, or came home to solve the problems. There's the one who always sticks up for you, including talking to the girl. She talked to the girl in Bulgaria, didn't she?
Yeah.
She had conversations, said that you're not a bad guy, and how this breakup basically has affected you, didn't she? Told him it was bad. Here's the problem: his dad. This one's behind you, supports you. That one's behind you, supports you. This one, I'm sure, cares about you, but is upset because, like you said, you have ruined his plans for retirement, so he can't retire because of the financial loss. How much money did Cody give you? Approximately. 60,000?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess.
Dad gave you how much?
Like 100,000.
Mom gave you how much?
It's like 30,000 or something like
So
that.
around 200,000. And the vast majority of this money went to some girl on the internet. So they're upset. I get that. But we know he didn't fire a gun. We know she didn't fire a gun. We know he didn't fire a gun. He shot the second he walks in the house.
At what point does he come into the house?
It's like 10:30
And where does he enter?
through the garage,
So where does he park his car?
under the awning thing.
Outside, not in the garage?
Right.
So do you see him walk in? Or hear him come in?
No.
So you're upstairs maybe, or where are you when he comes home?
When he came home, I was gathering some of the like power bars into my little shoulder satchel thing.
And where are the power bars, in the kitchen, or?
In the kitchen.
So you see him come in?
I hear the door, but then that's it.
And then when do you see him physically?
I see him when he walks into the kitchen.
And what do you guys, what is said?
He asks me what I'm doing, and I basically tell him the quick, short story, because at the time my dad and my mom were talking.
Where were they?
They were in her office.
Okay, and what is the short story you tell
That
Cody?
That Dad caught me still talking to the girl that had caused all the problems, and that he was kicking me out of the house because I had broken his rule.
Did you tell Cody that he threatened to kill you if you came back home?
No, I still didn't tell Cody about that. I had told Cody previously when I went to Cornerstone that that's what Dad was going to do if I had made any more mistakes, not the specific one that I had caused, but if I had made any more mistakes. And then Cody told me that he was going to do that when I went into one of the side offices with him before they officially dropped me off.
When you went to Cornerstone?
Right.
So your dad had told you in the past before that he would kill you?
Right.
For what reason?
If I basically did anything related to this, again, costing him a lot of money.
And Cody knew about that?
Right. He just didn't know about the one that was just said. Whether or not he knew from like the paper that my dad had written out of all the consequences and everything like that.
When did your dad write this paper?
Before they came to get me on the 4th. Yeah, I mean, I don't know the exact time.
Do you know where the paper is or what it's written on?
It's written on like a greenish yellow college ruled just piece of paper and pen.
In the office or bedroom? Or?
I don't know where he keeps all of his stuff.
All right, so what else do you and Cody talk about?
So then after talking about that, he says that he'll take care of it, and then him and my dad, they're the ones that always yell and raise their voices and everything like that.
So did your dad eventually enter the kitchen, or did Cody go to your dad in the office?
No, my dad came in when he heard that me and Cody were talking.
And what was the conversation then?
When they started to talk, I just left the room, and I just went back upstairs.
So you didn't hear what they talked about?
I mean, not in any. It was more just that he was defending that it's just, that I just did this, and that it's not like it's costing any money.
Were they yelling? Did they raise their voice? Or they were talking?
They were yelling.
Did you hear any threats or?
My dad had said that that everybody had agreed that if I had done this, that I would have to go. That there wasn't any more wiggle room or second chances or anything like that. And then you know, he came around to the base of the staircase, and then he told me that I need to go.
Your father did?
Yeah. And then I told him that I was just trying to pick up the last few things that I needed to. There was like a bag of my, like a trash bag of like my clothes, that I had still not unpacked from when I got back from Cornerstone, that I just, you know, had to gather and put into my car, you know, all that just random stuff. And then, I don't know what time I actually left, but I think it was closer to like midnight or something.
Detectives began a psychological chess match. They didn't immediately reveal their hand. Instead, they let Grant lock himself into a specific timeline. Once he had committed to his story of leaving the house on Thursday night, the investigators brought out the digital forensics. Grant thought he could create reasonable doubt by spinning a web of lies about his family's dynamic. He didn't anticipate the cold, hard science of the crime scene. Listen to how the detective changes his tone from conversational to absolute certainty.
You got a medical background, correct?
Yes.
You ever been to an autopsy?
No.
Okay. An autopsy tells us a lot of things. Cause of death, a lot of times how close somebody was to something. Again, remember what I told you earlier? She didn't fire a gun, he didn't fire a gun, he didn't fire a gun. So they didn't get into a shooting amongst themselves inside the house. Angles tell us a lot of things. Dad was over here when he got shot. The bullet's in the cabinet and in the wall. We know that. That's one of those facts we just can't dispute. I see where shell casings are over here. See where shell casings are in here. See where shell casings are there. Cody was shot the minute he walked in the door, when he first got home. Bullet went through him, from his head to the back of his head, hit the door frame, and impacted into the wall. He never fired. He never fired. She never fired.
The words fact, we know, act as a verbal brick wall. The detective isn't asking a question. He is delivering a verdict. Grant suddenly realizes his carefully constructed narrative has entirely collapsed. He is completely cornered, and he is officially out of moves.
I mean, from his boss, from his coworkers. And you got to remember, we've talked to everybody before we talked to you. So we know what time he left work. We know why he told his coworkers and his boss why he left work. And we know what time he got home. And we have text messages that he has sent people afterwards. So based on what you're telling us, that he comes home and has this confrontation, talks to you, talks to his dad, you leave about midnight, and he's still there talking to your dad in the kitchen, none of that adds up.
Medical examiner can approximate the time of death based on the body. Now's the time, Grant. Now's the time, buddy. I'm just...
So I believe this, and this happened while you were still present in the house. And for whatever reason, you don't want to tell us.
They revealed that the family's Wi-Fi router told a very different story. Cody Amato's Apple Watch and phone had distinct activity logs. Margaret's devices showed specific patterns. And most damning of all, Grant's own digital footprint proved he was inside the house. Logged onto the network hours after he claimed to have fled to Orlando. Furthermore, crime scene technicians noted that the murder weapon, a family-owned firearm, was missing. Yet, Grant had inexplicably packed certain items that directly linked him to the scene post-mortem. As the detectives methodically dismantled his alibi, highlighting the impossibility of his timeline, Grant's flat demeanor didn't break into a confession. Instead, he attempted to pivot, suggesting a bizarre theory that perhaps a hitman, hired by the webcam model's dangerous associates, had come to the house. It was a desperate, grasping attempt to merge his digital delusions with his horrifying reality. The trial of Grant Amato gripped the public precisely because the motive was so deeply rooted in modern technology. The prosecution laid out a chilling, methodical timeline. They argued that Grant, unwilling to be separated from his internet addiction and furious at being exiled from his home, systematically moved through his house.
Now, you mentioned there are multiple data sessions. Was 407-687-0736 being serviced by multiple towers on the evening of the 24th and the early morning hours of the 25th?
Yes, there were some kind of flipping between towers in the data records.
And is that a function of the phone looking for the easiest path, the path of least resistance, as it were?
Looking for the best signal.
And is the crime scene being covered by those two towers?
Both those towers could provide coverage in the geographic area of the crime scene.
You had mentioned previously RTT data, real-time tool data.
Correct.
And an ARC, the less than 100-meter dash mark, the 80-meter mark. Can you explain what slide 11 shows us?
Yeah, so again, this is for the rec phone ending in 0736. And these are for the RTT measurements between 11:53:32 p.m. on January 24th, 2019, and 2:05:57 a.m. on January 25th, 2019. There were multiple records of 1.55 miles using tower 145098 and that particular sector. So drawing out 1.55 miles from that tower and going 0.05 miles on each side, that is where you get the depicted arc. And then based on drawing that arc, you still see the crime scene on the map, and the crime scene falls within the coverage area of that arc.
Now, your chart under CID 145098, your entry stops at 2:05:57 at 1/25/2019. Why is that?
Past 2:05:57 a.m., there were no more network events or interactions with the network that were on this phone.
Now, how or why could a phone go off network at any given point in time?
So it could be a variety of reasons, just some of those common ones. If it was, it would have to lose connection with the network, so lose power to connect. So turned off, for some reason it was in an area that was not serviced by the tower. Anything that could cause it to lose power or prevent it from communicating with the network.
So turned off, destroyed, anything that makes that phone stop talking to the towers.
Anything that makes it stop talking to the towers.
Now, I want to make something clear for the jury. You know, when the phone hits multiple towers like this, for example, can you infer specific phone movement from that?
Just off this data alone, I cannot.
Okay. So that doesn't mean the phone's going all over the place. You can't tell.
I can't make any more conclusion based off of that.
Right. But based on the real-time tool data, you have narrowed the window of where that phone was and when it came off network.
Correct. So between the 11:53 and 2:05, with those 1.55 mile measurements, the phone will be located within the estimated area of that arc.
And the crime scene, of course, being in that arc.
And the crime scene falls in that arc.
The defense fought back, heavily emphasizing the lack of a smoking gun. The murder weapon was never recovered. There was no direct DNA evidence proving Grant pulled the trigger, no blood found on his clothing. They argued the state's case was entirely circumstantial. But circumstantial evidence, when woven tightly enough, forms a net that is impossible to escape. The jury was presented with the $200,000 theft, the broken ultimatum, the fabricated timeline, and the undeniable digital footprint that placed him at the scene. In August 2019, after brief deliberations, the jury reached a verdict.
The state of Florida versus Grant Amato. You've been found guilty of 3 counts for killing both your mother, your father, and your brother. Margaret Amato, Chad Amato, and Cody Amato. At this point, you've been found guilty by a jury of your peers who have now indicated that you are not to be sentenced to the death penalty. Based upon those circumstances, the court is limited to one finding and one sentence for you. As to each count, the court would adjudicate you guilty. I would sentence you to life imprisonment without any possibility of parole as to each count. I further would indicate that you are to be released to the Department of Corrections as soon as feasibly possible. And otherwise, sir, just God have mercy on your soul.
Grant Amato was found guilty of 3 counts of first-degree premeditated murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The Grant Amato case remains one of the most chilling examples of how far an obsession can go. It asks terrifying questions about the modern era. How much of our reality are we willing to trade for a digital illusion? For Grant Amato, a man who once had a bright future in medicine, the answer was everything. He traded his father, his mother, his brother, and his own freedom, all for a screen that eventually went completely dark. What are your thoughts on how digital addiction played a role in this tragedy? So let me know your theories down below. Don't forget to leave a like on your way out, and I'll see you in the next investigation.